Hi everyone, this is the Black Beauty, homemade, handmade television from the heart. Welcome. Now if it's in the news, on your mind, close to your heart, getting up your nose or on your chest, it's in the court of public opinion. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you stay and I hope you enjoy the show and indeed take part, and particularly as we go out onto Rundle Mall and get your opinions in the court of public opinion. On the show today, the wonderful Peter Gers and Carol Whitelock, and I missed them on radio. They were so good together on that Friday afternoon show on the ABC. Theo Morris is going to join us. Anne Moran, councillor with the Adelaide City Council. I want to talk to Anne about homelessness and also some of these ugly buildings, of which we happen to hear of the birth of a new one just this week. Can I say welcome to all our supporters and our sponsors. Rundle Mall is coming on board, and we've got some interesting competition details to give you in the weeks to come, but they're a wonderful sponsor and a great asset to our city. Here Artistique on King William Road and Tailors of Distinction on Unley Road. Welcome to all our supporters. Now, it's certainly an interesting week politically. I don't know how you feel about this. Front page of The Australian. Former union boss Bruce Wilson said last night $100,000 from an association which was set up with legal advice from the then girlfriend Julia Gillard was used to buy a house in Melbourne where the future Prime Minister would stay from time to time. Now, this whole thing with these people like Ralph Blewett and Bruce Wilson, it's not really the kind of thing that you'd imagine a Prime Minister would be involved in. But I think to a degree we're missing the point. This so-called Australian Workers' Union slush fund that was set up, and all we're getting really is who knew what and when and who said what to whom and when was that, and, you know, letters and documents and all the rest of that. I don't think that is the problem. And I must say Julia Gillard handles herself extremely well. She is one tough lady. But that's not the problem either. We seem to blindly accept the idea of a slush fund. Now, do you remember Norm Gallagher? You remember Norm Gallagher in the Beach House? And I don't know whether this falls into the slush fund kind of scenario, but apparently the union bosses would go around and they would say to the building companies, you know, Norm is building a beach house. We want so much concrete. We want so many rafters. We want brick paving. You know? And of course, if you don't, the inference is if you don't cough up, whether it is money or favours or holiday houses, you're going to have a lot of trouble with the union. Now, business can't afford a lot of trouble with the union. This Australian Workers' Union story goes back to a time in Western Australia where they knew a very large building company had been asked for money. Now, whether they gave that money or not, I don't know, but they wouldn't, the building company would not swear out a complaint. Now, I do remember from my radio show here at 5DN when they were building the Hyatt Hotel, which is now the Intercontinental, and they were building the Myer Centre. I had people who would ring me up almost in tears and tell me of the standover tactics and the, I don't know, I suppose you'd call it mafia tactics of the unions. Now, some would say, no, that was in the bad old days of the builders, workers, the Norm Gallagher days, you know. But hell, there are good people in trade unions. They don't deserve to be maligned and have their reputation destroyed by these crooks, and that's all they are. They're not union officials, they're crooks. And you think what happened on the waterfront of Sydney and Melbourne before all that reform took place. You know, there was rampant corruption. Anyway, we have to move on. But that's something I think we'll take to Rundle Mall in the weeks to come and find out what you think about that whole scandal. Maybe you don't even think it's a scandal. Maybe it's just a bit of cut and thrust in the political world.
Myra, many boats in the harbour gonna go down south to make many $5 and shake up the party.
One of the things I'm going to do this week is to ask each of my guests if they have any peeves, you know, something that gets up their nose or is on their chest or whatever. And as we do on this program, we have a little look at the things that occurred on this day. This day, by the way, is the feast day of St. Jude, the patron saint. You know who St. Jude is? The patron saint of desperate cases.
And actors.
Can you believe that?
And actors.
Is that true?
Hello, Jeremy.
Are you well? Peter
What a
goes?
dump. What a dump this
I
garage
know.
is. It's a dump, frankly.
I'm-
I thought you'd have a lovely garage, but this is just, it's really a bit tacky.
I'm tired of apologising for it.
Jeremy,
I really am.
Well,
Before we go any further,
Carol
Could have put a
Whitelock,
Hoover round.
ladies and
too.
gentlemen.
do you have any dogs?
Yes.
Peter has a real problem with dogs
What?
because they follow him round, smelling their dead master on the clothes he's bought from the op shop. So
Well,
just keep the dogs away.
Look, I have been known to be
Yes,
a
you
frequenter
have.
of...
I've done a show with you in an op shop. We
That
both
is true.
have.
Oh, that's right.
Yes,
yes.
yes.
You're looking very well,
We
Jeremy.
were in the window of St. Vinny's
Yes.
We
on
were.
Norwood Parade.
And
How much
nobody
is
bought
that-
us.
How much is that megastar in a window? No, I like the baronial fireplace. I hope that stag doesn't fall on us.
Well, you know, people look at that and say to me, you've had a hand in killing an animal, which of course I never would.
No.
But the point is, I found him and I thought, well, am I going to give this wonderful, majestic creature a dignified existence and
You
a
mean
happy
Carol?
home?
This reminds me of Carol's lovely home in Norwood. She's
You're
got a lot of
suggesting I
stuff.
have Carol mounted and put on the wall?
It has been suggested. She's got a lot of stuffed animals too. Yes.
You two had on a Friday, and I never know why the ABC didn't run you two guys permanently as a couple, an odd couple.
They
I
couldn't
do
afford
admit.
us.
They couldn't afford us.
They couldn't
They couldn't
afford
afford
you.
Peter's outrageous demands. I mean, you know, the dressing room list, you know, he has to have Perrier water and all these
At
things.
the ABC, not. Carol had her own trailer.
I
well,
wish.
Yeah, full of hairspray.
You could do with some.
If you
Could I
don't
have my
ask,
hair
you
on
don't
straight?
get.
Is my hair on straight, Carol?
It just lies there limply. At least mine sticks up.
Boy, does it stick up. There's a hole in the ozone layer with this woman's name on it. There is. Climate change, she began it.
Oh,
yes.
Lord.
Once I went, it was her birthday, I went to a supermarket and I bought the largest, cheapest can of hairspray, Jeremy.
I don't do cheap, Peter. It
And
went
I
in the
said, oh,
bin.
happy birthday, Carol. And she said, I thought you'd be insulted. She said, oh, thanks very much. It was family size hairspray. Family
Well,
size.
you've got a buy and bulk. Now, I know, I don't know if you miss being on air, but you must miss his...
We're three people who've never gone grey, isn't that strange?
It's a miracle.
Spooky.
well,
never
look,
gone grey.
It's in the genes.
I've got one grey hair now, I noticed the other day.
I miss nice Peter. I don't miss the interrupting hippo.
You've never
Who
gone
used to,
grey.
he used to be the interrupting hippo, and every time we embarked on a guest or a topic, Peter would go off on these weird tangents, and you'd have to say, Peter, look at the rundown, look at the rundown. And he would just breeze in and say, you know, there's nothing on the show, there's nothing on the show, look at the rundown. Never looked at it, never had any idea what we were doing.
We had fun.
I think
did.
that sort of spontaneity and chemistry is what
Chaotic.
it's about. I mean, the point is, if you sit around with researchers and you've got, as you'll see here, apart from it being a garage, it's a handmade television program. There are no things in the ear where, you know, your producer might be feeding you the next question or telling you to wind up or
Never.
whatever. And there are no auto cues and no, what do they call those things? Teleprompters. You know, so I reckon things either fly or they don't.
I had one at Channel. Well, you're very good at the ad lib. You know, you're very lucid, Jeremy.
Well, I never had anyone to write for me, so if
No.
I didn't
No.
make it up on the spot, it didn't happen.
in your linen suit. Yeah, I'm disappointed you're not wearing your ostrich boots.
Well, I'm giving them a rest.
Are you?
Yeah.
Hoping they'll regrow.
I used to have, at Channel 7, I was hosting horror movies.
How apt.
Yeah, yes,
You
thank you.
weren't deadly earnest, were you?
No,
no,
but
no.
there was Deadly Earnest, and Russell Starkey did it for a while,
Right.
until he dared criticise a film and say, this film's a heap of crap, watch something else, and he wasn't there
Russell.
next week.
Yeah.
And then there was me, and I did it for a couple of years. I did it the first time, it turned out it was something like 9.5 hours work to record an introduction and an outro to a horror movie on a Friday night, and I was paid $17.25, which
Didn't
was
you-
equity minimum, less
Yeah.
tax.
Didn't you criticise the films? You were the critic
No, I didn't.
who ate
Well,
Adelaide.
you had to, so they were generally, they were old. Anyway, I had an auto cue that you worked with your foot.
Oh.
So it could go too fast like that, or it could go too slowly. And it's a bit like doing this, rubbing your stomach
same
and
time.
shouldn't draw attention to my stomach.
I wouldn't if I were you.
It was very hard to do.
Yeah, you know, Graham Kennedy used to do his own directing. So he would direct with his foot, I think it was his foot or something maybe under the desk. He would pick the cameras, he'd pick up the close-ups, and he would basically be a one-man television station. Amazing.
That's great.
What else did he have under the desk?
Well, not knowing him at a distance, I would say almost anything is
Mind
possible.
boggles.
He had that crow.
But you're enjoying your retirement, aren't you, Toots?
We don't use the R word.
What do you use?
We say holidayland. The retirement sounds very Jane Austen. You know, the ladies behind the lace curtains lived a
Yes.
retired life.
It's long service leave that we never
It's-
took.
It's
There's a lot to be
holidayland.
said for that. Do you know Florence Nightingale? You've probably got a book here on Florence Nightingale.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Came back from the Crimea and she went to bed
Yes,
for 56 years.
Yes.
Stayed in her bed.
She was
Well,
resting.
Sensible, really.
I would think that war would have done a bit of damage.
For someone who spends most of his waking time in bed eating gyros,
Yeah.
how can you criticise her? This man eats gyros in bed.
Doesn't everybody?
Well, it's never
you-
crossed my mind.
You go to bed and eat massive meals. I think he has
I
a
eat all
ground
my-
sheet over him.
I eat all
So-
my meals in bed.
horrible.
Bouillabaisse is particularly
That's
difficult
horrible.
in bed.
Oh, Lord,
Soup is a bit of a test in
Carol,
bed.
do you like the freedom of not being at the ABC? Because I understand, obviously, the ABC have got restrictions on what you can say and balance and all of these things.
Yeah.
It must be a bit like walking on a tightrope.
You can get told you're editorialising. Some people don't quite so much, but I've been told I was
Yeah.
editorialising over something as simple as saying, oh, Senator Nick Xenophon's on the line, you've got some good news for us about food labelling, Nick.
So the
This-
good news statement was a
That was
editorial.
editorialising.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Okay.
But
But
it
you
was-
do now
that's-
write letters to the editor,
I
don't
do.
you? And
Yes.
you let it fly.
And,
yes,
and
I
you
can.
have your column in Boomer magazine.
I do, yes.
In which
that's
you
good.
espouses the joys of bonking.
I didn't
for
quite put it
elderly
down.
people. Oh, yes.
I just said that once you're free of the constraints of work,
Yes.
so the love to give you a love, dear, but I've got to go to bed, I've got to get up early.
Yes.
Or the love to give you a cuddle, I've got to get up and go to work.
That's an old excuse. Yes.
You're free and you have time for each other.
Which is why her husband, Ken, looks exhausted.
Yes.
Exhausted.
Well, see, this is another part of the homemade television. A telephone rings. And it's
real life.
Do you know what happened the other day? We were in the middle of an interview, and somebody drove into the garage. And such,
love it.
Such is the professionalism of my guests. They dutifully pretended they couldn't hear.
It's probably-
This sounded like a jet engine.
It's probably Ferris Strabulsi on the phone. he wants his hair back. You're
No,
not
look,
getting
I-
it, Ferris.
I tell you, if this was a wig, I'd have bought a better one.
Yeah.
I really would have. Look, it's wonderful to see you both. I really do miss you both. And on that Friday, it
thank
was
you.
a highlight of my radio listening week. I thought
Thank
you two.
I mean, I'm still. Oh yeah. Well, I loved working with Carol, and we worked together on and off for 30 years. It
was good fun.
We were a sort of team.
But Jeremy, you asked me the other day and said, why are you not still working? I'd like to ask you the same question.
Yeah.
Well, I will get around to it, but I believe this on 44 is a way that I can satisfy a lot of my
Drive.
drive and my ambitions to talk
Well,
and
I'm really-
talk to lovely people like you guys.
I'm really enjoying the show in a strange sort of way.
It is a strange sort of show. Except that now I did ask you if you were going to have a peeve. Not a
peeve.
perv, but a peeve.
Most of the packaging industry, particularly people who make blister packs
Oh, yes.
backed with cards
That you
that you
can
can't
never
get
get
into.
them off.
I
Yep.
stabbed my finger the other day.
Oh,
Went
Peter.
skeptic. I thought I was
Not
going to lose it. I'd never
surprised.
play the piano again. Trying to get a
Yes.
CD out of the wrapper.
Little sticky labels on
Shocking.
things.
And Peter?
Terrible drivers, especially me.
Yes. Oh, I drove with Peter once. We went out to Novita to do an OB, and I rang my husband and said, look, I don't think I'm going to make it through today. I just want you to tell you I love you because I'm going to die. Because Peter's driving is so bad.
Yeah,
But he
that
has
is
a Volvo,
pretty
which
terrible.
makes him a safe driver.
It's a lovely car. the
Oh, it is.
Volvo, And I
I've-
drive. I'm a self-fulfilling prophecy. I drive like a Volvo driver. Have you got a hat?
And you
Well,
crunch
I've got a
through.
hat over there, as a matter of
Yes.
fact.
You crunch through when you get into the back of Peter. Peter's car, you crunch through empty cassette boxes,
oh, well.
cigarette packets, Coke cans, and also it's like a single layer
It's
rubbish
nice
dump.
to see a car lived in. Peter, great to see you.
And H. Stop saying H.
So I don't know
Really
where that
annoys
comes
me.
from.
I don't know. It's mad. Jeremy, you're very promising.
Thank you.
I think you've got a career in front of you here.
I'm going to work at it.
Yes,
I can promise you that.
Good.
Peter Gers?
I'll come again, but I want you to wear the ostrich boots. What a dump! God, this place is a dump. Get me out of here.
No, you go straight home and don't stay talking to him. It's not good for you.
I know.
Take care of yourself, Carol.
Thank you.
Carol Whitelock, Peter Gers. The Court of Public Opinion.
There are many boats in the harbor gonna go down south and make many $5 and shake up the party. Shake up.
Great house, thank you. Rossdale built it for us. We love it. I'll show you through. We wanted a house with a barley feel, so we worked with our building consultant and designers to develop a plan we liked. They were so flexible and cooperative. When it was all designed, we got an absolute fixed price and they stuck to it. No extra charges, and their people were fantastic to work with.
We're actually thinking of building a new home.
You should go and see all their displays and talk to them about your ideas. It's the best thing we've ever done.
Rossdale Homes, because trust is a must.
Scammels, South Australia's specialist estate auctioneers. Visit us at 7 Chapel Street, Norwood, or at www.scammelauctions.com.au.
Myra, many boats in the harbor gonna go down south to make many $5.
And don't forget, if you want to add to the program, you want to pass judgment or criticise or add something, it's opinion@44adelaide.com.au. I'll give you all the addresses at the end of the program. From last week's show, just a bit of catching up. Rod Reeves, who's with the Salvation Army, he reminds me of a couple of facts. You know, we're talking about the wishing tree at Kmart, which is a wonderful tradition which started here in Adelaide, and they've got them all over town. That's where you can contribute a Christmas gift, put it under the tree, and it'll go to somebody who might not get a Christmas gift for one reason or for another. Now, there are Kmarts in, I'm not sure how many suburbs, but the one we were talking about last week was in Rundle Mall. That began 25 years ago, Rod Reeves reminds me, and it began here in Adelaide, and it's now absolutely everywhere, the wishing tree. And he also reminds me that the Salvation Army itself began right here in this city. Now, one thing the Salvation Army knows a fair bit about is homelessness. And I've asked Anne Moran, councillor with the Adelaide City Council, to drop in and have a chat about that. I was reading some amazing statistics as to what homelessness actually costs the community. Thank you for coming in, Anne.
Thank you, Jeremy.
It says here, the chronically homeless are costing taxpayers a staggering $5.5 million per person in economic costs. This is according to a Life Course institutional cost of homelessness valuation study. I mean, that's just dollars and cents and all the rest of it, but anyone walking around town and seeing homeless people has got to be fairly distressed by that, particularly at this time of the year.
Well, exactly, Jeremy. I mean, homelessness in a country as wealthy and educated and as sparsely populated as Australia is absolutely ridiculous. And at that cost, we could all buy each homeless person a mansion in Springfield with a swimming pool.
Absolutely.
So what on earth is the government doing with the money when we can clearly see that homelessness is on the rise? For the first time since I've been on council, we've seen homeless people in the parklands during winter, where usually that somehow they either go to somebody's couch or find some sort of shelter. But the situation is so dire that we've had permanent camps there during the winter. So God only knows what summer's going to be like when we always get quite a few people. So it's a terrible problem.
The council has sort of given a kind of a time frame whereby you want people to move out of the parklands. Where are they going to go?
Well, we've got sick and tired of being told by the government that they're negotiating or dealing with these poor, desperate souls in the parklands and really leaving them there for months and sometimes years. As we've read in the media, there was a permanent camp by the old ETSA building in the grove of trees there with young women one young woman had finished 3 months of chemotherapy, was turfed out of hospital and was just left there. So we don't want the parklands to be an assessment centre. We want the government to take the people. Obviously permanent housing is a slow, laborious process because these people are often quite resistant to normal housing. But we don't want them to use the parklands as an assessment centre. We want them to take them to a motel, a camping ground, somewhere where they're protected and sheltered and then assess them. But the government's extremely resistant to that idea, so we've given them a week. But of course we can't just pick people up and drop them at the city limits, but we really want to put the government on notice that this is a very short-term stay situation. You've got to take them somewhere else.
Well, what are you going to do if they just decide not to do anything, which is what they've been doing?
Well, I don't think the government will let us, want to see sort of us calling the police and hauling people out of the parklands and dropping them at their office front doors, but that's exactly what we'll do. The aid agencies are wonderful. I'm not criticising them at all, and although they're a bit sort of peeved that we've given them such a short time span, I think they'll really get I want to say get off their seats, but they've already done that. But I think they'll hurry up and house them. They know what council wants, and I think they'll do that. I mean, they're stretched, they haven't got enough money either, but it's not that many people. I mean, it's not a huge problem. It could be done. I mean, there are motels sitting empty and so forth. So we haven't actually put it to the test yet. But come summer, we'll have to. But we will call in the police and we will take them to safe places if necessary.
Yeah, what worries me is that we went out in the Court of Public Opinion into Arundel Mall and we talked to people about foreign aid a couple of weeks ago. And people were pretty as one in saying that, no, charity begins at home. We should be able to provide homes or what is needed for the needy, and then we can worry about the rest of the world.
Oh, absolutely. We spend millions, indeed billions on foreign aid, and worthily too.
But you know that England has said to India, no more foreign aid, $800 and something million they give, and they've said, look, if you can afford a space program and you are a nuclear power, you really don't need our money.
Well, that does give pause for thought, doesn't it?
Doesn't
exactly. And that their aid would be a drop in the ocean in India, I would imagine. But look, people are quite right. Charity must start at home. It's not an insoluble problem. Lots of people have said to the council, oh, well, you can't solve the mental health issues and the alcohol issues. We're not trying to. We're just trying to solve the problems of the parklands, the small problem we have. Our residents and businesses are getting sick and tired of campers. And they're also getting sick and tired of people gathering in the daytime and drinking and running amok. So we actually moved a motion last night that we look at remedies for that sort of behaviour. And I'd like to see us perhaps put a dry zone in the South Parklands. That hasn't come up yet, but it's a last ditch, it's a last resort sort of thing to do. But I think that's probably what we'll have to do.
I went out yesterday and I took some pictures, and if we can get those up while I'm talking to you about this. I just, at random, I took some pictures of buildings that I just don't think are particularly attractive. And yet I see in the Advertiser they've published an absolute doozy. What do you know about this? The city's tallest building, a sign of growing up. It's also a sign of something that's pretty darn ugly. You've obviously seen the picture. Have you approved this at the Adelaide City Council?
The City Council has I think seen this. We don't approve buildings over $10 million anymore. The government does that. So what the council does is offer, we actually don't even say approve or disapprove. We see it first, so we offer suggestions like, we think this one's too tall, we think this one's too short.
What do you think of this?
Well, I can't come onto this one because actually I'm on the panel, and the state government surprisingly has put a code of conduct on the City Council that we're not allowed to talk about developments before they come to us, or indeed for the rest of our lives. So I'd go into government jail if I talked about that one.
How cosy!
But these sort of buildings that are outside the old plan is what triggered the new plan. Indeed, I think the architect that did this one has done quite a few and been very vocal in saying that height limits are restraining Adelaide. What we as a council are really concerned is the design, obviously. That's why there's a new design commission. Oh no, it's the new government architect, Mr. Hewitt. As a council, I would say that some of the buildings that are coming through that process while might be nicely designed if you're an architect, are not, I think, fitting in with the cityscape that we are used to, or want to see, not what are used to, would like to see. And I think it's a shame that the old plan has been thrown out of the window for the central business district, because some buildings are just too tall for the site. And we've seen buildings that I can't name that have overshadowed other developments that were built according to the plan, buildings that had solar panels and so forth, and they've got buildings planned next to them that will put them in total darkness. And because the planning rules really have been in some ways abandoned, there's no recourse for these people. And really the only planner we're seeing now is whether the bank will lend them the money. So the banks have become the planners. If these buildings can't pre-sell, the bank says not good enough development, you know, too tall or too big or too something, and they become the planner. I think that's a sad, very sorry state of affairs.
Yeah, well, buildings can be beautiful and they can also be darn ugly. Now, I'm asking everyone today if they've got a pet peeve, something that gets up your nose.
Well, I know it sounds awful. I don't like it when people say H.
Oh yes, you're the second person who said that.
Oh really? I'm a bit nervous about saying that. I thought I might offend quite a few people. I don't like it when I read letters to the editor saying, oh, we're all whingers, we're a state of whingers, when they have the little insight into themselves that they are actually whinging about whingers. You know, this must be the ultimate whinge, mustn't it?
Yeah.
I don't like it when do-gooder is used as a derogatory term, and I've done it myself, but when you think about it, we shouldn't be doing that. But most of all, people that have vicious dogs and leave them off the leash, I hate that. That's a real pet peeve, more than a pet.
Indeed. And it's great to see you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Happy Christmas.
You too.
All the best.
Thank you.
Anne Moran, folks.
Let's take a walk through the colours in the air.
Rundle Mall is conveniently Christmas. With over 700 retailers, 15 arcades and centres, 4 leading department stores and extended trading hours from Sunday the 9th of December, Rundle Mall has Christmas covered. And for your convenience, we're open on Proclamation Day, the 26th of December, and New Year's Day too. Visit rundlemall.com for the chance to win $500 cash. Simply enter the code word Channel44. Uniquely Rundle Mall.
Scammels, South Australia's specialist estate auctioneers. Visit us at 7 Chapel Street, Norwood, or at www.scammelauctions.com.au.
Great house. Thank you. Rossdale built it for us. We love it. I'll show you through. We wanted a house with a barley feel, so we worked with their building consultant and designers to develop a plan we liked. They were so flexible and cooperative. When it was all designed, we got an absolute fixed price and they stuck to it. No extra charges, and their people were fantastic to work with.
We're actually thinking of building a new home.
You should go and see all their displays and talk to them about your ideas. It's the best thing we've ever done.
Rossdale Homes, because trust is a must. I hope you're enjoying the show. A couple of follow-up things from last week. And I am, when I say chasing this young lady, I mean that in the most honourable sense. Her name is Elisa Fitzpatrick. She did go to Loreto down on Portrush Road. She is this state and this country's newest Rhodes Scholar. I believe she's studying medicine, but apparently a brilliant person. It's not often I find myself in agreement with Sarah Hanson-Young. I don't find much about the Greens that kind of attract me as a, philosophy. But she said something interesting during the week, that these Afghan translators and people who have helped our armed forces in Afghanistan should be given some kind of priority in coming to Australia, because their lives, when we leave, their lives are not worth a plugged nickel. So Sarah Hanson-Young, I think you're absolutely right in urging the government to give these people a bit of a break. Our cultural attaché, Michael.
Yes.
What are you looking for over there?
Well, I'm trying to find in your vast library the 50 Shades of Grey, the book, the novel. Have you read it?
And I call you the cultural attaché.
Yes, and all I've got's the Funk and Wagner. And I think you should have read 50 Shades of Grey, dressed like that.
Right.
Looking like a pimp. High quality one.
You think I look like a pimp? What about your outfit?
Well, it...
What explain this?
I'm sort of... you're at the Paris end of pimping, I'm at the Highney Street end of pimping.
I'll think about that. I've got all week to work on that.
The 50 Shades of Grey has taken off. It's a novel that hundreds of millions of women around the world have read. It caused, It caused a blue with a high-priced banker who's salaried, and her husband didn't like the advances that she made, so they're going to get divorced. There's a great entrepreneur who's turned it into a board game. I've turned it into a poem. Shall we read it?
Oh yeah, sure. Is it suitable for broadcast?
It's yes. Does this go to air sort of midnight to dawn?
No, but
right,
we can.
Can't we pixelate it or something?
We can bleep things out if we have to.
Right. Me missus bought a paperback downtown on Saturday. I had a peep into her bag. 'Twas 50 Shades of Grey. Well, I just left her to it, and at 10 I went to bed. An hour later she appeared. The sight filled me with dread. Her left hand held a length of rope, and in her right a whip. She threw them down upon the floor and then began to strip. Well, 50 years or so ago, I might have had a peek, but Doris hasn't weathered well. She's 84 next week. Watching Doris bump and grind could not have caused more pain. Things went from bad to worse, and poor Doris toppled off her frame. She struggled up upon her feet a couple of minutes later. She put her teeth back in and said that I must dominate her. Now, if you knew our Doris, you would see just why I spluttered. I'd spent 2 months in traction for the last complaint I'd uttered. She stood there nude, just naked like, bent forward to have a rest. I took a pace to brace myself and stood on her left breast. Oh, Doris screamed, her teeth shot out. My God, what had I done? She moaned and groaned, then shouted out, "Step on the other one!" Well, readers, I won't tell no more what happened on that day. To suffice to say, my jet black hair turned 50 Shades of Grey. With apologies to the Dorises who are out there.
That's Lawson. It's wonderful. Listen, I can get you, leave that with me, I can get you an Arts Council grant for that.
I'd like to be interviewing some of your girls on the couch afterwards.
Oh, the jury?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. All right, do that after the break.
Look after yourself. Michael Pratt.
I want to be happy, but I won't be happy till I make you happy.
Caitlin's in Rundle Mall and she's sampling public opinion, as this is the court of public opinion. You'll meet our jury in just a couple of seconds. And we've got some things from Facebook that you've had to say about the topics today. But just a little catch-up from last week. On the subject of foreign aid, Joan says, England dropped, I mentioned this before, I think England dropped India, won't give any more foreign aid to India because they say if you've got a space program you don't need charity from England or English taxpayers. So too has Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and I think others are urged to as well. Well, I didn't know that. And feedback on childhood obesity. Denmark has just dropped, you're all international this week, aren't you? Denmark has just dropped its fat tax. Reward and incentive will always work better than fear and force when it comes to children or people generally. John says, you drive your car in and we see a glimpse of the garage, why don't you show it to us properly? Be a bit self-indulgent, wouldn't it? I don't know. We'll see. And Bill asks me something here which I don't think I should answer. Bill says, what's the difference between homemade, handmade television and what we see on 2, 9, 7 and 10? Oh dear. Now, look, let me put that down there and I'll think about that. I'll think about a really good answer. Now, to the jury and some hot topics this week. Coralie Cheney. Welcome to the jury.
Hi, Jeremy.
Julia O'Neill, Christine Esau.
Hello, Jeremy.
I hope you're up to this task, onerous and all as it is. We went into Rundle Mall and asked people what they thought about immunisation. You know, this is a sort of a hardy annual, really. It comes up over and over. I can't count the number of stories I've done on immunisation. People come out of the woodwork and they say it's not a good idea, but clearly scientific evidence says, surely, the daughter of a doctor, Christine,
Absolutely a good idea. I think it should be legal. I think you should have to do it. I think if we go overseas to any other country in the world, we have to have the right vaccinations to enter that country. Why don't we immunise ourselves? Why would we want to risk an epidemic? If anybody's seen an epidemic of any of these things that we go against, chickenpox, all of them, rubella, why on earth would you want to allow that to come back into society?
So whooping cough, anyone who's seen a child, a baby with whooping cough,
dreadful.
appalling. Julia, why are we even having the argument?
I don't know. I've got no idea whatsoever. I agree with Christine. We can start an epidemic by not immunising our children. I think that doctors and scientists have had it right for so many years. Why change that? A child is born with antidotes for up to, and they work on the child for up to a year. Yeah. And after that, they start to wear off. And then that child is vulnerable to getting a disease from someone else. And what if that child passes on, say, for instance, measles to a mother that's just in her first stages of pregnancy? It can be fatal for both parties. And I just think that we need to immunise our children. Don't come in my backyard if you're not immunised.
Yeah, and Coralie, the argument they seem to throw up is, oh, well, polio isn't around anymore, so we don't have to bother.
But it is around, and that's the problem. All these diseases are around. My son at 18 months had meningitis, and he nearly died. He was 10 days in hospital, had a soaring temperature. It was the most horrific time, and fortunately he is now fine, but as a result of the temperature being so high, it cooks the brain, and he could have been blind, deaf, had epilepsy or whatever. There is now an immunisation for meningitis, and any parent that doesn't immunise their children against these things like polio, for example, there was this movie the other day called The Sessions, a story of a little boy who's about 7, got polio, and then as an adult, he's in an iron lung. Yeah. Why would you risk that? Now, it can happen because it's out there, so it's just absolutely necessary.
And I take it the doctors can't sort of put the foot down and say, look, I'm sorry, ma'am, it is irresponsible if you don't let me immunise your child.
We have our own choice, and people travel a lot more these days, so
bring it in.
Yeah.
Caitlin went into Rundle Mall, and this is what we found was your opinion.
I'm Caitlin Petru, and I'm in Rundle Mall to see what you think about this week's hot topics.
I think they're definitely a good thing. I think everyone should get them. Well, I think the immunisations are a good idea for most things like, I suppose, polio and tetanus. That's the kind of thing that you have to get done. I think that things like flu shot you don't really need, but it's probably in the best interest of your child if you do get them immunised.
Oh, I think it's proven over many years now, in recent history certainly, that it's virtually eradicated all common diseases really. So to go backwards on that is definitely negative for me, I think.
I think immunisations are terrific. My only concern is that when they're new, sometimes I personally wonder about how much the long-term impact of them are.
No, thank you for that, and everyone who gets stopped. I'm sure you're all running around at this time of the year doing things in a very urgent way, and I thank you for sparing the time to talk with us when we stop you and ask you a question like that. Now, Graydon says, unquestionably good immunisation. This is from Facebook. Keith Arnold says, just because the government supports them, it doesn't mean to say that it's safe. I've got 2 kids immunised via homeopathic versions. Well, I don't know if you want to trust that, I don't know. Michael Overeem, as for immunisations, there should be a document given to all parents describing the ingredients in the immunisations and the potential consequence of some of those ingredients. Tim Hatfield, immunisation is cruel, opponents, or critical, I should say, and opponents are misinformed. Aaron says immunisations are bad, short and to the point. Luke Wheatley, undeniably good. My mum was a nurse years ago at Flinders, and she saw kids die from not being immunised from whooping cough, which is 100% preventable. What about a terrible thing to be a parent and know that you could have prevented? Yeah.
And it's out there, you can catch it.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I don't know whether you saw in the advertiser this week, this new building which they are calling it The city's tallest building, a sign of growing up. Gee, I thought Adelaide had grown up. But anyway, it got us thinking about some of the really ugly, and sadly, the really ugly buildings seem to be all modern. So we went out and we talked to the people in Rundle Mall about, well, modern buildings and ugly architecture.
No, I think Adelaide's Adelaide, and it is what it is because it's smaller. If we start getting a big high-rise, then we lose the Adelaide like feel to it. So I don't know. I like the small city.
No, I don't. I don't think we should build taller at all.
What's that?
I just don't think it achieves the desired effect. You know, you're condensing everyone into a small area. It's proven overseas that, in my opinion, that it creates more issues in a negative way, I think. So yeah, we all living too close as it is, I think.
Higher and better. I mean, just look at all the developed cities: Sydney, Melbourne. If you want to go overseas, Singapore, all got big, large cities. That's why their tourism is better than Adelaide's.
Like, so we could go out. We could go like north and south.
Out, up, just bigger in general. I think.
Yeah, I think Adelaide's probably a bit too conservative. I think there's areas of Adelaide that we can preserve. So the front of the East End, some of the beautiful old buildings along North Terrace, but I think certainly the interior parts and parts more towards like Carrington Street, I think that we should go much higher. I think we've been far too conservative, not just in the Adelaide CBD but in other areas. I mean, the Le Cornu site, for example, was vacant for so long it's a joke. So I think we should be a bit more innovative and creative and go higher, and with a bit more pizzazz in the buildings as well. So we've got a good mix of the old and the new.
And of course, apart from being modern architecture, everything that's modern has to be taller. You know, it's kind of like this, I don't know, a male envy of something. Each architect has to build his building longer. Or taller, bigger.
That might explain the Shard.
Big is better.
It would explain the Shard.
It would explain the Shard in London. But I have to say, the Shard in London, everybody talked about that being so ugly, and yet it is a landmark building, and it will be a landmark building. And I think that Adelaide has to have these tall buildings, otherwise when you fly over, you just want to keep flying over.
Yeah, well, okay, I shot around yesterday and I took some pictures, which Amber, I think, will intersperse in amongst what we're talking about here. But, you know, the building, the Law Court. The Law Court's on Angus Street.
Very ugly.
Isn't it? I mean, how would anyone sort of... Can you imagine the committee that accepted, oh, gee, this is great. Oh, hell, how much will it cost?
We're a little bit behind, aren't we? I mean, I like to travel and I like to do LA, bit of New York, and the high-rises over there are amazing. And it just... and I think we need to just lift up Adelaide by introducing some high-rise buildings. Like, look at the Gold Coast. How is that going?
Yeah.
And it's increasing the population into the state as well. Well, it will increase the population into the state. And I just think that, I mean, that may be not so attractive, but we can do architecturally better buildings. But I would like to see more high-rise buildings.
So would I. So would I.
Well,
Absolutely.
Coralie, can't we be big and beautiful?
Yes.
Well, I don't think there's any ugly buildings, to be honest. I mean, the fuss they made about the Sydney Opera House when it was being built, and now Sydney wouldn't be Sydney without the Opera House. Even the Eiffel Tower was the same. The French hated it when it was being built.
Well, it was only meant to stand there for 6 months.
That's right, and it was going to be pulled down. But what Frenchman doesn't like the Eiffel Tower now or feel it's part of being a Frenchman? Personally, I don't think there's ugly buildings. Maybe the Federation Square in Melbourne does come into that category, but apart from that, no, I think they're wonderful.
So I think that's fabulous too.
No,
it's so interesting.
And we're not going to get rid of the churches, so why can't we slap a couple of big high rises amongst them and you know, we're in 2012 now.
Yeah, but when you talk about New York and even to a certain extent Sydney, they have got some modern classical buildings and they just don't go for the...
I'd love a couple of
They don't go for the
Guggenheims.
outrageous.
I'd love to have a couple of Guggenheims.
Outrageous. We're not ready for outrageous yet, I don't think.
No, I don't think it works. But anyway, now refugees. We went out there, I mean, that's a terribly vexed question. And whether you call them refugees, asylum seekers, illegal immigrants, queue jumpers, most people have got a particular pet word to describe people who come unannounced to this country. Why, if they're refugees, do they destroy their papers? I mean, I would think it'd be very important to prove your identity and prove your refugee status. Anyway, 30,000 people have arrived since the Labor government came to power. 30,000 people in 5 years have come here. Some people would say that's a good thing. This is what, in Rundle Mall, you had to say about, are we too tough on immigrants, or are we not tough enough?
No, I think we probably need to be maybe a bit tougher.
In what way?
In the fact that, I mean, we've got so many homeless Australians here. I think we should be looking after them before we look after someone else. I think that, like, obviously they're escaping their country because they can't live there, and if you say something like, you know, send them back to where they came from, they can't stay where they came from.
So you think that in that sense, yes, we are too tough?
Yeah, we're too tough, definitely. We have, you know, the resources to be able to support them here.
That's a very difficult question. I mean, most of them are quite sort of genuine in terms of being benevolent and wanting to live in this country. Whether they meet the rules to do so is a bit of a different issue. And we also have refugees coming in all different forms and in all different modes too. So we're not just talking about boat people, we're talking about people that are coming in legally on aeroplanes and then not leaving and then claiming refugee status. So the difficulty with most refugees is the difficulty of all the record keeping in their home countries, which are usually in turmoil, usually in a state of war, very few records, it's hard to identify them. So I wish we could determine quicker whether they're genuine refugees or not. I think that would actually help a lot of the situation of how they're treated, because 3 or 4 or 5 years to identify them is just not on, whether they're genuine or not.
Difficult question. I'm an immigrant myself from many years ago, and I think we should be we should show respect to everyone around the world that are struggling or trying to improve their life. But as far as a refugee status, it's a very tricky one to sort of police that, I guess. So I certainly think we could improve the way we deal with people that try and get to improve their life.
Well, I shouldn't say immigrants, because we are an entire country of immigrants. I mean, I'm French and everyone is from somewhere else, but the point is we did come here in a more orthodox manner. And if a country can't control its borders, it really doesn't have the right to govern. If you can't control your borders, you have serious problems there. Now, Grayton says, we are too tough. Well, the question, are we too tough on refugees? No, not tough enough, Grayton says. Keith Arnold says, reference as a $20, I thought it was a £10 pom. Oh, I suppose that could be right, wouldn't it? $20 pom. A $20 pom from the 70s. I think we should continue to embrace our multiculturalism and share our wealth. Tim says, far too rough on genuine refugees. Would much rather my tax dollar be spent on helping someone start a new life after fleeing some war-torn hellhole than to somebody who pops out another baby. Kate says, not tough enough on refugees. David Humphreys says, we are way too soft, obviously, or they would not be coming here if there were bigger deterrents. The jury. Coralie.
I think if they're illegal, they should be sent back and go through the proper process.
If they are illegal?
Illegal, coming in illegally.
Well, they are on boats. That's not
right.
the
So
way
they should
to
be
do it.
sent back and put through the proper process. The proper process may take a few years, and there's obviously documentation and things they have to go through. As far as that goes, no problems. But if they're trying to get in illegally, then no go, go back, start again.
My heart says, oh, bring them in, but my head says, no, we can't afford to. We can't afford to run them daily, so to speak. What happened to the old-fashioned way? Like, my parents came in from Italy on a boat, signed papers, naturalisation, all that kind of stuff, 75 years ago. Yeah. Came to Australia, went to Port Pirie. My father became a carpenter. He did it all on his own. My grandparents built their own, made their own veggie patches and fruit orchards. And, you know, they contributed to society.
Well, that group of people have carried this country on their backs collectively for hundreds of years. You know, that we have, at any one time, 20 to 30 million people in the world on the move, all looking for a better place to live. Now, What do we do about that?
And you know what? I mean, I can understand them wanting to come to Australia.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to be tough to individuals. I understand why they want to leave some of the hellholes that they live in. But I agree with the panel here that we need to enforce a strict routine when people come here, and we can't break the rules all the time for some of the people.
Yeah.
I'd send them straight back, because that's actually being kind in some respects. If they don't like living in the sort of places we're putting them, then we're better off to put them back and bring them through, put their name down on the list.
Everything is kind of cause and effect. And we are always treating the effect. We never go to the cause. The cause is worldwide tin pot, despot dictators who create war and havoc and rape and pest, famine and all the terrible things. And of course people will flee from that.
Yeah, and I understand that.
But there's a correct way of doing it.
We need an international hit squad that goes around and gets rid of these bloody dictators.
Well, climates too. I mean, it's also environment. You know, it's not just the dictators. There are a lot of people that want to leave because they live in such a dreadful place where poverty prevails because of the climate, because of the lack of access to water.
And a lot of the people who have struggled will make wonderful citizens, because everything they find in this country is going to be easy compared to what they have left. But you can't have rampant people just coming and going at their own choice and at their own risk.
To a certain degree.
You're a wonderful jury. Thank you very much. And we will be back very shortly in the Court of Public Opinion.
I'll send the sun smiling through.
Great house. Thank you. Rossdale built it for us. We love it. I'll show you through. We wanted a house with a barley feel, so we worked with our building consultant and designers to develop a plan we liked. They were so flexible and cooperative. When it was all designed, we got an absolute fixed price, and they stuck to it. No extra charges, and their people were fantastic to work with.
We're actually thinking of building a new home.
You should go and see all their displays and talk to them about your ideas. It's the best thing we've ever done.
Rossdale Homes, because trust is a must.
It's a home theatre.
It's an office.
It's a salon.
It's a bar.
It's a garage.
Garage Mahal can transform your shed, carport, garage or undercroft into your favourite room in the house. You'll be surprised with what we can do with that disorganised and messy space. Regardless of your reasons, your lifestyle or hobby, we can create whatever you can imagine. So call Garage Mahal today on 1300 839 353.
A 100 times or more, you used that line before.
The Mousetrap. It opened in London. It was, of course, The Mousetrap by Agatha Christie, first written as a radio play for Queen Mary's 80th birthday. Its producer, Peter Saunders, thought it would last about a year, but no longer. Spare a thought for Romulus Films. They bought the film rights back in 1956 with the condition that no film would be released until 6 months after the show had closed in London. And they are still waiting. Don't you love it? I do. Now, Betty Samus, you had me on your show, and now you're on my show talking about entertainment.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Our new segment.
It is a new segment. I'm actually quite excited about this new segment. Thank you for inviting me.
Did you see Mousetrap when it was here?
Mousetrap was fantastic. The sets were amazing. The acting was just sensational. They used an Australian cast, which is even better.
Is it true that they don't let people tell others what the end?
It is true.
What?
They all come out and they ask, can you please not let the cat out of the bag, so to speak?
Well, it obviously works because it's in its umpteenth, 100th or whatever year. Now, you've been doing some work for us, and you remind us that Johnny Cash would have been 80.
Correct.
This year.
That's right. And this Saturday night, Johnny Cash, I'm sorry I'm referring to my notes.
No, do it.
Would it be this Saturday night at the Festival Theatre? There is a show that is capturing his spirit.
Yeah.
He is an iconic superstar. We all love Johnny Cash. And this concert takes you back to the humble beginnings of the famed man, who we all remember had timeless hits, and he will also do some stuff, the duets that he did with June Carter. So he's got an amazing girl on tour. The guy that plays Johnny Cash, his name is Daniel Thompson. Sensational talent. If you're a Johnny Cash fan, you will not be disappointed with this.
Yeah,
Festival Theatre.
I love his music. I've got a little hard drive over there, and I've got dozens and dozens of his CDs. And he was an absolutely charming man. I had the pleasure of meeting him a couple of times. And he was a wonderfully generous, kind person. One of those people you meet, and he kind of fills the room.
Did you see the movie?
Yes, I did. I don't know what to
like
make of the movie. I liked the man too much to sort of see somebody else do him somehow.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
What else you got?
Polecats is on at the Festival Theatre as well, and that's on until Saturday. It's a bevy of gorgeous girls, though, in sensational costumes. I don't know if you're going to like that.
I think I would like that.
The advertiser says that the girls in sensational costumes had the audience cheering and clapping at every remarkable move.
So the polecats, and is that about pole dancing?
Yes, it is. It's a pole dancing performance. It combines elements of physical theatre and burlesque cabaret to create a visually spectacular performance. The great thing about this performance of polecats is that the set design, there's 5 spinning stainless steel poles that were developed with Australia's leading theatre design workshop at the Adelaide Festival Theatre.
Because they do export an awful lot of their creativity to other parts of the world.
Proud of our festival
and
theatre.
the illusionists, tell us quickly about that, because we've got to run.
Jeremy, I need you to just quickly have a look at this footage.
Now, I love those sort of magic illusion
Well,
things.
it's not rabbits out of a hat, really, is it?
Well, but the thing is, how do they do it?
Well, that's the secret question. I love watching those magic shows to see how they do it, but with the illusionists, you are going to be blown away. This starts on New Year's Eve at the Festival Theatre. A great idea is to take the whole family. You know, sometimes, oh, what are we going to do with the family? Take them to the illusionists.
And they can get rid of them.
Correct. But you can also stay back later.
And would anyone be silly enough to get up on the stage?
Well,
come up here, we need a volunteer. Come on. No, you'd never be seen again.
Well, you never know.
Or you get cut in half.
Well, yes, you can. They do the cutting in half and they do the levitation. How they do that levitation, I've got no idea. But anyway, you can take the whole family to see it and watch the fireworks.
We got to go.
On New Year's Eve.
Sammy,
Sammy, you can call me Sammy, you can call me whatever you like,
Betty
Jeremy.
Samus, lovely to see you.
Lovely to
and we'll see you
too.
next week.
Take care.
The Court of Public Opinion.
Away from other girls. Keep away from other girls. Don't break my heart just to be smart. You gotta.
As you know, and I will take up that suggestion that we sort of have a closer look at the garage, and we'll do that as we move a little bit closer to Christmas. But you know, I'm a great fan of the auction houses around town, and as I said to you last week, I got the Piping Shrike, which I do swear was the one that sat behind Premier Rand's desk in Victoria Square. I really do think it was the same one. Well, that's my romantic thought. Now this week, I got this. It was all of $8, and you can see it's a very old canvas, and not everybody's cup of tea, I suppose, but it is. Let me hold it up for you. It's a interesting, original work of art. $8. I think that's a bargain. I think that's amazing. And it could be worth millions. You never know. Now, I did promote the fact that Theo Morris was going to be a guest on the program, and at the last minute he couldn't make it, but he has sent me along his loyal Deputy General Manager of Rundle Mall, Martin Hazy. Hi.
Jeremy, hello. Coming
Up to this season of the busiest time, I guess, and I must compliment you, because when we go in the court of public opinion to get people, we go to Rundle Mall because it is a thriving, living, interesting cross-section of our city. So you're to be congratulated.
Well, thank you. Rundle Mall's the busiest spot in South Australia.
No, it would be, yeah.
We have about 24 million folks per annum coming through there, either for shopping or for business or just simply to meet someone.
24 million?
That's right. It's by far the busiest spot in South Australia.
Yeah. You are, because of your focal, the nature of Rundle Mall, being a focal point, you always get criticism. I mean, I saw something the other day about the fact that somebody was talking about low rent kind of shops, which kind of perhaps look more of the bazaar nature rather than the boutique nature or the department store nature. But doesn't all of that add to the character of the place?
No, I think Rundle Mall's a very colourful place. And with that many folks coming through it for so many different reasons, locals and people from around Australia and of course people from overseas, we're all going to form an opinion, and sometimes those opinions will be different, and that's fine. We welcome it. I think the overarching aim, though, of course, is for us to improve. So it's a mall for everybody. That's the important thing. It's a mall for everybody, and that's for retailers, that's for property people, that's for shoppers, it's for tourists. The list goes on and on and on. And I think that's important. So that public debate which we hear about Rundle Mall, Jeremy, on a whole range of subjects, we welcome it because we listen. That ultimately factors into a lot of the plans that we put forward to improve Rundle Mall.
Now the truth is, of course, you'll never please, like doing a television program, you'll never please everybody. So all you've got to do is to basically try and please the majority, if that's possible. Now, coming up to Christmas, we all have ideas about shopping hours. What happens? I'm totally confused about what's on and not on in terms of shopping hours this Christmas.
Rundle Mall has almost two distinct customer groups. So Monday to Friday, we're very, very, very focused on the 120,000 people that work in the city. We service a very primary need for those folks. So that's why some years ago now, 2 years ago now, we introduced public early evening weekday trading, which sees a lot of the stores open till 7 p.m. Monday to Thursday. So we're really encouraging that with those folks that work in the city because that's convenient for them. They can leave their office, they can pop down, they can shop. In the week before Christmas, we'll be open from the Monday through to 9 p.m, pretty well every night. And then once we get to Friday, which I think is the 21st of December, we'll be open through to midnight. So that whole week, there's, in terms of convenience for city workers and for shoppers, is that Rundle Mall will really be the place to be. We've then got normal weekend trading just before Christmas. We'll be open on the Monday on normal days. And then of course Christmas falls on a Tuesday where we will be closed so everybody can have the family time. But the most exciting piece is that the day after Christmas, Proclamation Day, Wednesday the 26th of December, is that Rundle Mall will be open 11 to 5. And that's a first. So we're looking forward to a very busy day.
Well, happy Christmas and thank you for coming in. And give my best to Theo. As I said, he couldn't make it, but you know, he tells me that some years ago I threw him in a swimming pool.
I'll share that with you.
Yeah, he said, and he said that have you got a pool? I couldn't remember that I did that. And he said, have you got a swimming pool? And I said, well, yeah, a little pool. And he said, oh, that's interesting to know. I might chuck you in. And then he went on to explain that he remembered this awful incident in our lives. I don't remember it. CEO, I don't remember it, if that's a defence. Anyway, Martin, happy Christmas. And long may the mall do what you do, which is obviously be the centre of Adelaide.
Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you for inviting me onto the program.
It's a pleasure. I thank all our sponsors and supporters and all our guests and of course our very talented, wonderful, hard-working crew. They're really wonderful people at Channel 44. Now, a little heavy petting quickly before I go. Olivia, Peter Sellen has put Olivia forward, looking for a good home. And I'm reading this off the iPhone. Hello, I'm Olivia. I am a 1-year-old female Bull Terrier Heeler Cross, medium-sized dog, very loyal, would prefer to be an only child in your family. I would prefer to share my affections and loyalty with you and not with other animals. I'm a dog that likes regular exercise and would love to live a healthy lifestyle. I'm a clever dog that would respond well to training. And I will show you, I think she's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I'm desexed, microchipped, vaccinated, health checked and ready to go at only $300. There you are. Perfect addition to your family. Have a wonderful week. Now, just before I go, Sally said, I loved the jacarandas that we went out with last week, but she thinks she can top the jacarandas with this. And I don't know what it is, Sally. Is it a coral tree or a Christmas tree? They're out and about. I've seen some of them. But I agree with you. This, you know, God makes a blue tree, and now God has made a red tree. I'll leave you with those images. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Jeremy Cordone. Believe in yourself, and I'll see you next week in the Court of Public Opinion.
And a smile on your face as you travel down the highway of your life. Don't listen to those voices that say it can't be done. They build walls where there was never one before. No, there's nothing that can stop you, nothing that can drag you down. If you keep looking for that ever